With all the incredible natural beauty in South Africa, we have one serious problem. Much of it is just not accessible to the public. Most of the land in South Africa is privately owned, and the parts that are government owned are usually either not accessible at all or are strictly regulated, with only a few roads, expensive permits, and virtually no freedom to camp or leave your vehicle. While countries like the US and New Zealand have massive public land areas where you can 4x4, camp and hunt, we don't quite have the same luxury. Right on my doorstep, just outside Port Elizabeth, is a massive area that has really intrigued me since I was young. The Longmore Forest is a huge piece of forestry land in the mountains with around 900 kilometers of roads just begging to be explored. I've heard rumors of beautiful waterfalls, forgotten forts, and incredible views, but there is almost no information whatsoever on the internet. I could spend days exploring this area in my Hilux, but there's one problem. You're not allowed to drive in here unless you work for the Forestry Service. For many years, the Longmore Forest has hosted rally championships, and I've watched with envy, wondering when I'd get an opportunity to put my wheels in the dirt and explore the same roads. But as it turns out, there is a way. You are allowed to enter the forest on a bicycle or by foot, provided you have a permit. And getting a permit is not that difficult. So in this video, we're going to be doing exactly that. We're going to go exploring, not with the usual fancy overlanding rig, but with this, my Scott Patron e-bike. I plotted a 45-kilometer route using Guide GPS, exported the GPX file to the bike, so we had some navigation along the way, and this is the result. A journey that would take us over the mountains on a rough single track and then down into the forest where I'd marked some places of historical interest. It all looks good on the map, but what would we find in real life? There's only one way to find out.
So this first section takes us through a dairy farm. So essentially it's just a farm road with green and lucerne fields all around us. But eventually we'll hit Fynbos probably in, I'd say, 15 minutes from now. And then it's a long uphill for probably the next hour or so. Well, it's a crisp 4 degrees Celsius. And therein lies our first difference between sort of traditional overlanding in a vehicle. We'd have a nice climate controlled vehicle. We'd probably have a coffee or a hot chocolate in a flask, and we'd be completely protected from the elements. But over here, none of that's the case. And it may get a bit warmer later, so we have to plan with our layers, and hopefully that all works out.
Up ahead is an intimidating but alluring barrier of mountains. We will be crossing these via a rocky single track called the Waterfalls Pass before entering the forest on the northern side of the mountain. It's an elevation gain of around 300 meters.
So up ahead here is a few kilometers of straight uphill, very steep, lots of switchbacks, beautiful single track through the Fynbos, so something totally different. I'm just going to push on through, try to get to the top as quickly as possible. It's probably going to be about a 45-minute ride up to the top, but the views from up there should be definitely worth it.
Running parallel to the single track, just to my right, is an overgrown track, which I'm guessing was used by ox wagons long ago to cross these mountains, giving this track its name. But that's just a guess. Either way, it's always nice to get stuck into the Fynbos and proteas that are so typical of the Cape Floral Kingdom. The Waterfalls Pass is quite rocky and technical in some places, and the views just get better and better the further up you climb.
So you see that mountain there behind me? On the way back, you're going to be coming down that mountain. So there's a nice downhill section, then there's another uphill section at the back there, then a very, very, very steep downhill in which I'm probably going to fall, but that's all part of the fun. Something to look forward to later. Hey, sunshine. Lovely. And our first pine tree. And our second pine tree. So there you go, top of Waterfalls Pass. So beautiful. I don't think we could have picked a better day. Blue skies, no wind right now. There were 40km/h winds yesterday and rain, so we skipped the worst of it, but beautiful. You can hear the sunbirds chirping and all the sort of protea bushes and the fynbos that they try to find some nectar on. You can hear some franklin in the scrub here in the fynbos. Lots of birds here. You can see down there Jeffreys Bay and St. Francis, and then on that side you can just see the outskirts of PE there. So yeah, beautiful location. Coast comes right past us with some green sort of dairy farms in between. Mountains, and we're about to go into the pine forest now.
On the northern side of the mountain, a watchtower, most likely used to spot fires, marks the start of the Longmore Forest. In a place with 900 kilometers of roads, you can just imagine how many trees must be growing here. This forest is looked after by MTO, which stands for Mountains to Ocean, who run forest operations along the entire garden route. As I descend the mountain, I found myself in a very different environment.
Well, we've hit the pine trees, which means we're officially in the Longmore Forest. It's so crazy how the scenery changes so quickly here. You know, 1 minute you're in green fields, next you're in fynbos, next you're in a pine forest that looks like it really shouldn't belong in South Africa. And I suppose it shouldn't belong in South Africa because these are not indigenous trees. There's a forestry plantation, but it's still beautiful. And I think the best thing about it is there's just no one here. Completely empty. Let's keep going, shall we? Got a long way to go.
My route today would take me along a ridge which forms a divide between the Lurie River catchment area to my left and the Van Stadens River catchment area to my right, before making a right turn and following a long contour road eastwards. Most of the next few kilometers would be downhill, so time to just sit back and enjoy the views.
So we've now crossed this big valley here. We've done the worst of the uphills. I think we've got a nice long downhill in that general direction. So you can see those are the hills we came over. Right at the top we've got some electricity pylons kind of going over the mountain there. We came underneath those earlier. And in that direction you'll see those mountains down there. The big kloof down there, that's the Van Stadens Gorge. Van Stadens Gorge, you'll know if you've driven the N2, it's a massive bridge. I think it's about 200 and something meters high. Fun fact, over the Van Stadens Gorge is the highest narrow gauge railway bridge in the world. Sadly not in use anymore, but it used to carry the Apple Express, which was a train that went into the Langkloof Valley and into the sort of citrus regions to carry fruit in and out of Port Elizabeth for the export market. So yeah, little fun fact, but we're going to one of the Van Stadens dams, and at the dam is where all our interesting historical artifacts of the day will be found. So there's our first fort by the looks of things. That's super cool. Okay, we're going to dismount the Batmobile for just a moment because up here is our first fort. And I'm going to run you through some of the history of this area, starting with the reason the fort is here, the Van Stadens Dam. So that dam down there was built in I think it was the late 1800s to serve the growing population of Port Elizabeth. And that was, about the time that the Anglo-Boer War broke out. And although the war never actually came to Port Elizabeth, the citizens were very concerned that if it did come here, there'd be a lot of disruption. So they created a
I think they call it like a town guard, and the town guard actually set up a few forts for the purposes of protecting this dam and the pump house, which is also down there. So yeah, war never came here. These forts never saw proper action, but they remain here in the middle of nowhere, untouched, protected, and we get to see them today. Let's go see what they look like. The fort's location on top of the hill would have given it a 360-degree view of any approaching threats, and holes in the stone would have given riflemen clear views of the dam and caretaker's cottage below that they were tasked to protect. So this would have been how they safely entered and exited the fort. Just a simple wall, come in and out here, and I suppose they would have had to stockpile all kinds of supplies here, food, ammunition, all that stuff. So yeah, it's really cool, but there's a lot more to see here, so let's head on and see if we can find the, I think it's called the lower fort. So this would be the upper fort. Let's go see the lower fort and then go check out the Van Staden's Dam itself, because there's a lot of interesting history there too. I think we've got some nice long downhills coming up now. Fun bits.
Oh, this forest is so nice. There you go, Van Staden's River. Crazy that this little river used to supply Port Elizabeth 125 years ago. Population is now over 1.5 million, so obviously new plans have had to be made for water supply, but this is no more than a little stream. Alright, this is probably my favorite section so far. We came through some really big pine trees, and now we're basically riding alongside the Van Staden's River, so you can hear the river sort of gurgling past, and it's actually kind of turned into a single track now right next to the river, which is really cool. To turn on this camera so you can see it. But yeah, that's one thing you don't get from overlanding in a bakkie or a motorbike. You don't get the sounds and the smells and that cold air in your face. I suppose with a motorbike you do to an extent, but not like this. So I think in the future I want to try to bring this bike with more often on my overlanding trips, so we can do sort of a combination of both. You know, we go as far as we can with the bakkie, and then we venture deeper in. Trying not to get soaked here. Venture deeper into the bike. Oh, big uphill. Oh. This is so cool. Stop here for a moment and just appreciate this view. If we were further, into the Tsitsikamma forest or further along the garden route, this water would probably be full of tannin and it would be very brown. You wouldn't be able to see clearly, but I suppose there are fewer indigenous trees here that have tannins in them. So this water is absolutely crystal clear. And that area there, I would guess that's probably 4 or 5 meters deep. It's incredibly deep, and you can see the bottom like it's nothing. Kind of tempted to go for a swim, but we'll leave that for a summer trip.
Just around the corner, we get our first sight of the Van Staden's Dam. Can you spot the 2 forts on the hills? Here's the upper fort that we just came from.
Well, here we are on the upper Van Staden's Dam. It's kind of eerie, to be honest, knowing, that this thing has been sitting here kind of derelict for a long time. Although I say derelict, but it's not. It looks like some of these railings and stuff were put in pretty recently. Look brand new. It looks like it's actually been looked after properly. But yeah, here we are on the dam. It's actually bigger than I thought. I thought it'd be like a piddly little dam, but look at this.
In 1861, plans to connect the growing population of Port Elizabeth to the Van Stadens River were put forward, with the dam finally being constructed in 1892. Below the dam, a series of filters were built to purify the water before it ran through the pipelines, but not much of these filters actually remain visible. It seems that they've been silted up and overgrown with fynbos. Overlooking the dam is the caretaker's cottage, now abandoned and overgrown. Gotta say, it's very creepy. I wouldn't want to be here at night. I don't know why, but there's something about this abandoned building in the middle of nowhere. I'm glad I'm here during the day. On a nice sunny day. Very cool though. Oh, that's cool. It's a waterfall. A few hundred meters downriver, another hidden gem, a waterfall leading into a deep pool. Bit chilly for a swim right now, but this would be very inviting on a hot summer's day. So we're pretty much exactly halfway through now, 22 k's out of about 44. You can see the elevation profile there. We went up the pass, long downhill. We're at the bottom now. It's going to be another long uphill and then a very, very fast downhill to end off the day. At the bottom of the hill, we cross the Van Stadens River for the last time. From here, the river runs through a gorge in the mountains before reaching the coast in spectacular fashion at the Van Stadens mouth. I have some old footage that my grandpa filmed here in the 50s and 60s. They used to camp at the Van Stadens mouth and sandboard down the dunes into the river, something that I also grew up doing. Oh. Right, so here's the lower fort. Slightly different shape, but same concept. This one's more of an oval shape. I assume that's so that they could fit more men this way around with a clear shot at the dam if needed. Try to get higher so I can show you, but the dam is pretty much down there. That glistening piece of water, that's the dam, and then the pump house is just over there. Same as the upper dam, there's the entrance, and there's actually a visible trench that's dug here. And I remember reading about this trench somewhere. So obviously they would duck in here and escape out that way if they needed to get out quickly. It's weird in such a peaceful place now to try and imagine a war. Thankfully the war never came here, but yeah, could very well have. And maybe history would have been very different. Maybe this dam would have been destroyed. Who knows? With a long climb coming up, I take off some layers of clothing and gulp down some snacks before hitting the road again.
Tell you what, it feels good to get the gloves off for a bit and just feel that rush of cold air. Sun is out, but when you're moving through the air, I mean, it's still probably only 15 degrees, so it's actually quite a pleasant experience.
You might think that there's no effort required on an e-bike, but that's not entirely true. On a 45-kilometer trail through the hills like this, the battery just will not last the entire route unless I use the lower assist modes. So I tend to use the lowest assist mode for flatter gradients and only switch to higher power on the steeper hills, which is really nice. Traveling alone like this, there's a safety aspect that I also have to consider. In my bakkie, I have enough food, water and shelter to keep me alive for weeks if something had to go wrong, plus a large first aid kit. But I can't carry that stuff with me on a bike. All I can bring is some water, some snacks, and a satellite phone to make sure that I can at least contact someone if something serious happens. Up ahead, the watchtower serves as a sign that the climb is almost over.
Okay, last little steep uphill stretch coming up. Quite an intense uphill actually. But then we get back on the downhill and it's a very, very steep, fast cruise all the way back to the car. I've actually dropped my rebound adjustment on my rear shock a bit because I don't want to be bouncing around on those steep downhills. And then I'm going to drop my seat post. Oh, look at that view. It's beautiful. Here comes the uphill. Oh, let's change down. Look at that view. That's awesome. Stop here for a moment, shall we? So remember this morning I pointed across the valley and said we'd be coming down here? I was standing right there on that mountain when I said that. If you look carefully there, you can actually see the switchbacks that we went up this morning on the Oxwagon Pass. Now we're just coming down the other sort of foot of the mountain. Yeah, it's beautiful. My arms are sore from the downhill. It's very technical, but that's probably one of the things I enjoy most about this. For me, it's like doing a nice technical mountain pass in a 4x4. A bit of rock crawling. You've got to think of where you put your wheels. You've got to think of when to accelerate and when to brake. It's the same concept, just a little bit different. But we're almost at the top of the hill. We're going to get an amazing view of Jeffreys Bay and St. Francis from up there, and then a very, very steep downhill where I might very well fall. Let's hope not. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Look at that. Wow.
This was probably the part that I was looking forward to the most. I was braking the whole way down this section, and you can hear my tires had almost no grip on the really steep sections.
I think the worst of it is over.
As I move further down, the ground becomes less rocky and I'm able to pick up some speed. And then all of a sudden I'm in amongst some pine and willow trees as the fynbos start to disappear. Later it becomes wattle trees and eventually blue gums. As we come to the end of this video, I'd like to pose a question to you. Do you think that this could be considered overlanding? My feeling is yes, and it comes down to the fact that I'm not doing this for the purpose of trying to reach some sort of fitness goal or distance milestone. This is more about experiencing a new place, learning about my surroundings, and taking in the sights and smells along the way. In the end, I think that was achieved, and I can finally say that the Longmore Forest is no longer some sort of inaccessible mystery. Let me know what you think in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.